Have you ever genuinely asked yourself why? When you offer kindness with the best of intentions, what you sometimes receive in return is coldness, disregard, or even disrespect. You reach out with sincerity. You give, you listen, you care, and instead of appreciation, you're met with silence. Or worse, people begin to take you for granted. They assume you'll always be available, that your yes means forever, and that your patience is endless. It leaves you wondering, is there something wrong with being kind? The answer is complex, and it goes deeper than surface-level behavior. You see, when you choose to be kind in a world that often values dominance, speed, and self-interest, you're not just offering something beautiful, you're also unintentionally disrupting the emotional defenses of others. Carl Jung believed that our reactions to others often reveal unhealed parts of ourselves. Your kindness can act as a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see what that mirror reflects. For someone who has spent their life armored, defensive, guarded, operating in a world of scarcity, true kindness can be disorienting. It challenges everything they've built to survive. When you give without asking for anything in return, it unsettles the transactional mindset they've learned to depend on. In their world, every act has a motive. Every gift hides a cost. So when they meet someone like you, genuine, soft-spoken, emotionally available, it doesn't inspire trust. It triggers suspicion. It awakens their shadow. Jung described the shadow as the parts of ourselves we repress, the fears, insecurities, unresolved wounds we try to keep buried. When you offer your light to someone who hasn't confronted their own darkness, it threatens their equilibrium. Your generosity can make them feel exposed. Your softness can be mistaken for naivety. And their response? Often, it's to push back, to test your limits. Not always with cruel intent, but with a reflexive need to maintain control. And that's the paradox. Your strength is seen as weakness by those who haven't yet found their own. You've probably felt this dynamic before. At work, when you always offer to help, only to find yourself burdened with more than your share. Or in relationships, where your emotional presence becomes an expectation. Where people assume you'll keep showing up, no matter how they treat you. Slowly, kindness begins to feel like a liability. You start to question if maybe you've given too much. If maybe you need to change who you are to be respected. But that's not the lesson here. The world doesn't need less kindness. It needs a deeper understanding of it. Kindness isn't the problem. Unstructured kindness is. Unprotected giving. Compassion without boundaries. When you give endlessly, without clarity, without limits, your kindness becomes unmoored. It starts to bleed into sacrifice. And that's when people stop valuing it. Not because they're evil, but because human nature adapts quickly. When something is always available, we stop noticing its worth. So you're left with a choice. Do you shrink? Do you harden? Do you let the world teach you to guard your heart, to keep your warmth hidden behind layers of indifference? Or do you choose something harder, something stronger? Do you learn how to hold your kindness with structure? Because real kindness, the kind that changes people, the kind that heals and inspires, isn't chaotic. It's not endless availability. It's rooted in self-respect. It knows where it begins and where it ends. It knows that love without limits becomes martyrdom, and empathy without discernment becomes exhaustion. Jung said that light is whole only when it embraces its shadow. That's your task, not to dim your light, but to let it shine through the structure of inner clarity. That means knowing what you're offering and why. It means asking, is my giving empowering both of us, or just enabling someone else's dysfunction? It means realizing that your warmth is a gift, but it's not a gift everyone is ready to receive. And that's not your failure, that's their reflection. When you begin to see your kindness not as an obligation, but as a conscious offering, everything changes. You stop giving to be accepted. You start giving because it reflects your truth. And in that moment, kindness becomes something entirely different. Not a need, not a burden, but a power. A power that doesn't shout, a power that doesn't need applause, a power that simply is. Not everyone deserves your kindness. That may sound harsh, but it's a truth we often overlook in our need to be good, generous, and liked. Just like you wouldn't hand a fragile, priceless gift to someone who doesn't know how to care for it, your kindness must be given with discernment. The problem isn't your kindness. It's the absence of standards around it. When you begin to recognize the people who truly value your generosity, something changes. You stop trying to convince those who will never see your worth, and instead, you start to draw in those who honor what you have to offer. Jung believed that emotional balance comes from self-knowledge. The more deeply you understand your motives, the more you can balance your desire to be kind with your right to be respected. And this is one of the most important lessons we can learn. Kindness is not naivety. Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is clarity. It's knowing your own light and knowing exactly where and with whom to share it. So the question isn't, should I keep being kind? The question is, how can I keep being kind without losing myself in the process? That's the key. It's not about changing your essence. It's about changing your approach. Think about what truly goes on in the mind of someone who disrespects your kindness. What leads a person to see compassion as something to exploit rather than something to respect? Often, it's not about you at all. Your kindness reveals something uncomfortable in them. True kindness is a mirror. It reflects not only the good in people, but also the hidden, unhealed parts, their insecurities, their shame, their inadequacy, and not everyone is ready to face that. When you act with empathy, without calculation, without expecting something in return, it shakes people who live behind walls. Some feel gratitude, but others feel threatened because your kindness disrupts their inner narrative. It exposes what they've been trying to hide from themselves. Have you ever had someone react aggressively or coldly to a sincere gesture of kindness, as if your simple presence was somehow offensive to them? Don't be mistaken. That reaction wasn't about you. It was about what your light revealed in them. Imagine holding a flashlight in a dark cave. Some people will feel relief. Others will wince and try to shut it off. That's how it works. Not everyone welcomes the light. And instead of moving closer to it, some people will try to extinguish it, because what they fear most is not your presence, but what it brings into focus. That's why when you insist on being kind, when you remain soft in a hardened world, some people react with hostility. Your energy forces them to see that another way of living is possible. And that can be deeply uncomfortable for someone who's built their identity on defensiveness and detachment. So what do? How do you stay kind without becoming someone's emotional target? The answer is balance between compassion and discernment. You can't control how others receive your kindness, but you can choose who to give it to. You are not obligated to give endlessly. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to protect your energy. Jung said that not every soil is ready to receive a seed, and your kindness, if spread too widely, will fall in places that are barren, places where it won't be understood, won't be honored, won't be respected. Throwing your light to those who cannot value it is not noble. It's self-abandonment. How many times have you continued to be kind to someone who clearly didn't appreciate it? How many signs did you overlook, hoping your consistency would eventually earn their respect? This isn't about giving up who you are, it's about giving more wisely. Self-knowledge is the root of balance. That includes knowing the limits of your goodness. Being kind doesn't mean being endlessly available to everyone. It means offering your light to those who truly want to see it. And here's the surprise. When you begin to direct your kindness toward those who can receive it, everything changes. Your relationships feel lighter, you feel more respected, and most importantly, you stop feeling like you constantly have to prove your worth. But the real question remains, how do you know who is worthy of your kindness? Healthy relationships are built on reciprocity, a natural flow of giving and receiving. When you begin to notice that you're always the one giving, always the one compromising, always the one adjusting, it's time to ask yourself an honest question. What am I really getting in return? This isn't about keeping score. It's about recognizing imbalance. Because we often convince ourselves that if we just give enough, if we're kind enough, one day people will see us, value us, choose us. But the hard truth is, if you surround yourself with people who only know how to take, the issue is no longer them. It's your inability to set boundaries. If you never draw a line, people will never know where to stop. Ask yourself, How far are you willing to let your kindness be used against you? At some point, you have to realize that real kindness isn't just something you give to others, it's something you owe to yourself. Being kind to yourself means accepting that you can't save everyone, that not everyone will appreciate what you offer. And sometimes, the kindest decision you can make is to say no. Say no to the ones who only come to drink from your well without ever offering to refill it. Say no to the people who see your softness as an invitation to push boundaries. Say no to relationships that leave you drained, doubting your worth, and questioning your voice. Because here's what's powerful. The moment you learn to say no, your kindness becomes even more impactful, because now it comes from strength, not survival. You stop trying to please everyone and start living with intention. You no longer give by default, you give by choice, and the people around you feel the difference. Your kindness becomes a force, not a compromise. Ultimately, kindness is not an invitation to be exploited. It is an expression of who you are. But that expression must be guided by wisdom. You have to learn who is worthy of your light and who simply wants to use it for their own gain. So I ask you, are you ready to redefine what kindness means to you? Are you ready to stop being an easy target and start being someone who commands quiet respect? Because the moment you decide that your kindness must have structure, everything begins to change. You're not becoming less kind, you're becoming more discerning. And that wisdom, that clarity, is what transforms kindness from vulnerability into power. But how do you set boundaries without becoming cold or distant? Here's where we meet what some call the kindness paradox. The more kind you are, the more likely people are to test your limits. But why does that happen? The answer may surprise you. Psychologists have found that human beings instinctively test boundaries, not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity. We want to know, how much will this person tolerate? How deeply do they respect themselves? So when you're always available, always helpful, always saying yes, at first, people admire you. But over time, they stop seeing your kindness as a choice and begin to see it as an obligation. It becomes expected, and when finally you say no, they're confused, offended, even angry, because your yes had become their entitlement. Carl Jung once said, "What you accept transforms you." And this couldn't be more true. When you repeatedly accept that your kindness is used without reciprocity, you become someone who believes they must always give in order to be loved. But ask yourself, what is the cost of that belief? Is the approval of others worth the loss of your peace? There's a story of a woman named Valentina, a successful leader in her company. She was admired for being reliable, helpful, and always willing to go above and beyond. At first, she felt empowered, like she was making a difference. But slowly things shifted. People began dumping responsibilities on her, asking more and more, without thanks, without care. One day she decided to draw a line. She said no, and the reaction? People called her selfish. The same people who once praised her generosity now resented her boundaries. What can we learn from Valentina? If you don't define your limits, others will define them for you. And their limits won't be based on who you are, they'll be based on what they can get from you. And here's something even more important. Research shows that people with high empathy, those who are naturally kind and emotionally tuned in, tend to have the most difficulty setting clear boundaries. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that emotionally sensitive individuals often avoid conflict in the name of harmony. But this quest for constant peace can lead to emotional burnout and a loss of identity. Now think about it. How many times have you said yes when you wanted to say no? How often have you prioritized someone else's comfort over your own peace? How long have you given without asking, do I feel safe here? Do I feel seen? Kindness without boundaries is not kindness, it's depletion. But when kindness is paired with self-respect, it becomes one of the most transformative forces in the world.